Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In today's quick tutorial, I'll be showing you how to automate scheduling tasks in your AWS Lambda functions with the help of two services in AWS. The first is the step function service, which as you could see here, allows us to create ETL jobs. That is, we have graphs where multiple pieces of code or Lambdas are connected with certain flows and properties. And we'll be using this in conjunction with another service called CloudWatch, which will allow us to schedule our code automatically or graphs at a specific time so we can fully automate our workflows. It's incredibly simple to do, and we'll just be using two simple Python Lambda functions that are chained together here. So if the first Lambda function is scheduled and it is run successfully, it'll trigger the second Lambda function based on this step function, and we'll be able to automate this at a specific time using that CloudWatch service, which is also incredibly simple to do. So I'll be walking you through step by step of how to get your workflows fully automated in AWS, and I think this is one of the best ways to do it because it provides a nice graphical interface that we can create complex workflows. And really this can be integrated into any complex or simple ETL you like in a very simple manner. So enough being said, guys, let's jump into it, and I'll be showing you what we're doing on the Lambda side, followed by the step function and CloudWatch side. Okay, so first things first, we just want to go ahead and create two simple Lambda functions. And in order to do that, I'll just go to the Lambda service in AWS. So if you don't know already, you can just go search Lambda and go to the service. Lambda will allow us to create serverless functions, and I'm going to be doing two functions in Python that will be incredibly simple just to show you how this works at a high level. So we just want to go here and select Python 3.12, and we could just call it whatever we want. So we'll call it test YouTube1, and we'll go ahead and create this function. Okay, so for this first function, we can see that it's created. I'm just going to leave it as is, but really if you're setting this up in a real project, you want to have some form of code that's doing some functionality here, where the next aspect of the code, if you're going to have another thing that runs after this, is reliant upon this output that this Lambda is producing. So that's where the use of the step function comes in, is you have certain Lambdas executing certain tasks where these tasks are reliant upon one another in some aspect. But for today's example, we're just going to keep the base Lambda function as it is, and we can go ahead and go back here and create another one that's very similar. So let's go here again and select Python 3.12. And it doesn't have to be Python. If you're watching this, you can do any runtime you like. I'm just doing Python to show you for today's example's sake. So test YouTube 2, we could go ahead and create this function as well. Okay, so we can see that the second one is also created, and let's just go ahead and change it up slightly. So the other one said hello from Lambda. We can just go ahead and say hello from Lambda again to show you that it's producing a different output, and we can go ahead and deploy this other Lambda function. So now we have two Lambdas that we're going to execute one after the other, which is good just to show you for demonstration purposes that this step function is working as expected. Okay, so now that we have the Lambda functions created, we can just go to the next service, which is the step function service, and we can go ahead and chain those together as we please. So we can see we went to step functions, and we want to go to the state machines. If it doesn't automatically go to the state machines, you can just open the menu on the left and click state machines right here, as you could see. And then we can go ahead and create a new state machine. Well, let's go ahead and leave it blank, but as you can see, they have many templates that do certain workflows, which I never really looked into too much, but I just like to start blank to create my flow as I like. And there are many actions and flows and patterns that you can add from the left menu here. So this is a pretty complicated service, and you could do as you like and experiment with that as you like after you're done watching this tutorial. But for today's simple example, we're just going to use one of the most popular, and that is the AWS Lambda to actually trigger our Lambda function. So we can go ahead and drag that in there. So it provides a nice graphical interface where we could just drag the components in. And the first things first, we could just name it as we like. So we could just call it task 1, and we can just choose a Lambda function. So we can go to test YouTube1 and select that. And there are some other parameters here, of course, more advanced beyond the scope of this video. And this is pretty much telling this task to run this Lambda function. So this will be the first Lambda function that we're going to invoke. So we can go ahead and click create. Actually, not click create. We don't do that until we chain together all the tasks. So the next thing we want to do is after we created this first Lambda function, we can go ahead and add the second one here. And we'll just call this task 2. And then we can go ahead and select test YouTube 2. And then we see we have two tasks, but let's say we don't want task 2 to run unless the task 1 is successful. So we can go ahead and put in a flow there, and that is choice. So this is a really popular flow, and we can go ahead and drag this to the first rule. So the choice is we want to have a specific rule, and we can actually add a condition for this rule. And what this rule is saying, it's checking a variable in the outputs. And actually, just to briefly explain this, let's go ahead and we'll get back to this in a sec, but I want to show you what I mean. Let's go ahead and try to save. Let's go ahead and just delete this for now. It's fine. And we'll go back to that in a second, but I want to show you briefly what I mean. So let's go back to the Lambda by the output. And we could see in the first Lambda, that is test YouTube 1, that when this thing is successful, it's going to produce a status code in the output JSON of 200. And we want to tell that choice to look for that status code and check if it's 200. And if it's 200, we want to go to the next task. So based on your function, of course, you can have specific outputs, but for today's example, we're just going to check for that status code from the first Lambda, and then we're going to flow to the next state if we do receive that status. So let's go back into that state machine that we created. Sorry for the interruption. We had to go back so I could make that clear. And then we can go to that state machine and go edit. So we see that it's saved as we did before, and we can go back and insert that choice that we had. And once again, we can drag the first task to the rule 1, and we can go and add the condition. And the condition is going to be, we're going to put $ status code, and we're going to say is equal to number constant 200. So this is the only way it'll be successful and flow to the task 2. So this is what we have for our step function. Of course, as I mentioned, there are so many flows and actions you could do, so this is probably too simple for your use cases, but I hope you just get the gist of being able to actually create these step functions based on what I just showed you. So let's go ahead and save this. So we should have everything we need to actually run this full graph. We haven't automated yet in terms of scheduling it at specific times, but we do have the flow here. And so let's go ahead and exit this. And we can see we can start an execution here. So let's go ahead and do that. So sometimes if you want, you can insert a JSON to start your execution based on if your first Lambda is expecting some JSON, but really ours is simple enough where we could just start the execution without anything. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay. So we see that everything worked out successfully. And one thing I want to show you as well is if we change this, what will happen is, let's go ahead and edit this. So we can go here, or edit state machine. And of course, if we change this status code, what will happen is it should fail. And you'll see this a lot if you have complicated code and certain things fail, is it'll just be red and it'll show you that it cannot execute the task. Let's go ahead and save this, and we'll just run it again. So we said 201, which based on what we just showed you, it should fail. Let's go ahead and execute that, start execution. So give it a moment. See, it is red, and it'll tell you the cause. An error occurred while executing the choice. And of course, if this happens, you can go in and debug your workflows. So that's how we have a successful step function running through, and this is how it looks if you do have a failure in your step function. Okay, so the last step is to simply schedule this graph to run whenever we want it. So let's go up here. Let's go to CloudWatch. So this is another service. You probably used this before. It's a pretty popular one. And then in CloudWatch, we just want to go to Rules. Click Rules on the left menu there. And we could just go to Schedules. And then we can go ahead and create a schedule. And we can just call it YouTube test schedule. Doesn't matter. Of course, there's other parameters you can have here, and we want it to be a recurring schedule. And then we can just have it run whenever we like. So I'm going to run it every 2 minutes just to show you that it's running. And then that is every hour, every day, every month, and the day of the week. That's every day of the week. Yeah, and that is every year as well. So if you did everything properly in your cron expression, it'll show the next 10 trigger dates, so you could see that it's doing every 2 minutes, which is cool. And of course, if you do not know about cron, it's a very popular format for scheduling tasks, so it's used in Linux operating systems a lot. And if you're confused about these parameters or what to put in for your specific scheduling, just go ahead and do a quick Google search, and that should help you figure out what your cron expression should be. Basically, these parameters define what hour or which day in interval you want your task to run at regularly and automatically. So we can go ahead and click next. Flexible time window, we do not care about that. And then we can go ahead and find the step function service. So go ahead and search step. And we just want to, let's see, find API. Actually, I don't remember doing this, but let's see. Send start execution, so let's do that. And then we can just find the state machine. I believe it's this one. We should probably name our state machines better. So let's go ahead and go down here. We can click next. And then after schedule completion, you could do certain things as well. You can see there's so much complexity added here. Encryption, I never really played around with that. Permissions, so we can just create a new role for the schedule. That's fine. And let's go ahead and click next. And let's go ahead and create this schedule. So give that a moment to create, and I believe it's disabled upon creation, so we actually have to enable it. And it does take a moment to actually create the schedule. So your test schedule is being created. Let's go to schedules here. And actually, it should be running now. So if we go back to that step function, and let's make sure we did the correct step function. So that was the H8J. So you can go back there and see in the logs that it's triggering every 2 minutes. So step functions, so that is the correct one. And we can see the last one failed, so that's the one we just ran. So if we did everything properly, this should execute in a moment here. And I guess in the meantime, we can make it not fail. So we can go back to the state machine, actually just edit the machine. We go back to this and make sure it's 200. And just do that, because that's the code it is looking for. Save that. Go back to the state machines, and yeah, let's hop back on here when it runs again, and I'll show you that it ran a few times successfully. Okay, so it looks like I just went off camera, and now we are back. A few minutes later, it did schedule our task successfully at 2-minute intervals, so it looks like this thing was a success. I hope it worked for you, or you also just simply learned something new watching this tutorial. Really, this is the tip of the iceberg of the things that we can do in these new services with AWS to automate scheduling our tasks or a series of tasks using these services. If you enjoyed the video today, please consider liking or subscribing to the channel. Also, let me know in the comment section down below if you did, or if you want to see something else in a future video, because a lot of my videos actually come from suggestions in the comment section down below. So do not shy away from that. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.